Welcome to Fertilish, the podcast where we get real about fertility, infertility, and everything in between. I'm Laura.
And I'm Brandis. And whether you're knee-deep in treatments, just starting to ask questions, or somewhere in the ish of it all, you're in the right place.
Here we ditch the stigma, break down the science, and have candid conversations about the messy, emotional, and sometimes hilarious journey to growing a family and preserving your fertility.
So grab your coffee, your meds, or just your curiosity, and let's get into it.
Hey Brandis, welcome back for another episode of Fertilish Podcast. Super excited to be here again with you today, this week, where we are talking about maybe a somewhat controversial topic, and it is faith and fertility.
Yep, and that's huge as far as, you hear about it all the time with IVF or, trying to conceive even with IUI or different purposes. And, so many people have different beliefs around conception. And, I think it's important to know that we have people and patients with all kinds of different beliefs, and, there all are ways that we can accommodate those things. But you're right, it's kind of controversial, and it's a big thing that comes up when you're talking about conception and fertility treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether that is why we're not conceiving, how we navigate, fertility treatment, or just how we get through fertility treatment, or infertility as a whole. I think that faith comes up in many different avenues in regards to fertility or infertility treatment in different ways for each patient and for our providers.
Oh, yeah. And, I think, you're right. We have, as providers, ethical dilemmas and different things as well. And I'll kind of talk about my own journey with that in this episode. But, I think a lot of people, too, are afraid to bring up religion, especially in a consult, because it's like, am I going to get judged for this belief? Are they not going to want to treat me because of this? And so I think that can be a barrier for sure.
Yeah. And, what if my beliefs conflict with my provider's beliefs? Like, how do we navigate that? Or am I going to be treated differently? If what they feel like that is the best treatment for me may not be what I choose to move forward with because of my religious beliefs, is that going to be a conflict? And so I think that those are all important and very valid feelings to have, and things that I would love to be able to address today to offer more support and just to hopefully, put some ease regardless of what your beliefs are or lack of beliefs.
Yeah. Well, and so kind of background, even just on me, and, like you said, are my provider's beliefs gonna conflict with mine? Our job is never to put our bias on you in any way. And my goal when we have a consult or when you talk with me is that you will never know what really I stand for or whatever, because I shouldn't be putting my beliefs on you in the first place. I educate you, and I help guide you. But that's pretty much it. But I guess you'll kind of know with this episode. So I actually grew up Catholic. I have an uncle that's actually a priest, and that was kind of like the world I was raised in. And then I thought, I'm going to kind of venture out and see like what I believe and do my own kind of thing. And I remember, and to give you an example, growing up, I remember this vividly. I don't know how old I was. I was laying in bed with my mom, and we were picking out baby names because she was pregnant. And we were looking at this book, and I always firmly believed in my head that once two people got married, and this wasn't taught to me, I just thought of it on my own. When two people got married, that if you prayed really hard, both of you, to God asking for a baby, you'd get pregnant. And that's how it worked. And I just always believed that to be true. And I brought it up to my mom. I was like, hey, so when you get pregnant, like, does that happen because you just pray really hard, like when you're both ready? And she was like, no. And that was it. So, like,
she was like, I wasn't prepared for this conversation today,
no.
Brandis.
I know, and I don't even remember how old I was, but that vividly will always stick out in my mind. And I was like, okay. But so that's kind of the, prayer, God, all these things. And so even when this job came available to me, I remember asking my pastor, like, hey, what are the beliefs like around this? And because it's important to me, not that I will ever put my beliefs on my patients, but whatever I do, I feel like morally and ethically I need to align with. Like, that's super important for me, because in order for me to be passionate about something and really believe in it, like, my morals and ethics do have to align.
Sure.
And I remember him saying, Brandis, IVF wasn't even like a thing when the Bible was written. So anybody that tells you like it's this bad thing it's not true. And so I think if your heart is in the right place and you're really wanting to help people, then I think you should do it. So I think it's a big, like, if your heart's in the right place and you feel called to this, and you need to do it. And so that like gave me some, I don't know, like a sense of, okay, like this is something I could do.
Yeah. Permission.
Yeah. And so I think that's hard. It is hard to navigate. And I know people that have delayed treatment because they've had the same kind of, should I do this? Because am I going to be like frowned upon, or is my family going to look at me different?
No, absolutely. I have struggled myself with kind of grasping why IVF is ever looked at by any religious whatever as something negative. It's really, that's something personally that I've struggled to kind of wrap my head around, because for my own beliefs, I couldn't imagine why God wouldn't want a baby to be brought into the world that, to people that love them.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no people that want babies more than people facing infertility and that have, subjected themselves to fertility treatment. And so like it never made sense to me why it could ever be frowned upon. For me, I would always think like it should be the exact opposite. Yeah. And so I've always kind of struggled to wrap my head around that. But you're right. Like, unfortunately, we have a lot of patients who are faced with either feeling like there's shame, for going through fertility treatment, or that they have to be secretive about it, which I'm a very big proponent of. Like, if you feel like you need to tell people and that's healing and cathartic for you, that's what you should do. But if you don't, and you need to keep it to yourselves and process things in your own time and space, and when it's time for other people to know, then they can know then, even if that's like when the baby's born, whatever, like that's what you should do. But I hate for you to have to keep it a secret if you would otherwise be excited about it, because you feel like someone else's, opinion of it would put shame on this beautiful, thing that's happened to you, with bringing a baby into the world, or maybe not even that, but like, going through this very painful thing of infertility when you need the most love and support. So, it's sad to me that patients feel like that they have to, not be able to do what they need to do or get the support and love that they need during that journey. And that's unfortunate, but I hope that you feel like that we can, kind of fill in the gaps of some of that support for you if you don't feel like that you have that in your personal life. Because I think that CNY is truly just like one of the most loving environments that I've ever come across. And the infertility community is like one of the most loving, supportive environments that I've ever like come across. My husband has said, like, I know I've said it on this show before, but my husband has said quite frequently that, like, if you have the unfortunate experience of being a part of this community, there's no better community to be a part of. And so, I have developed relationships myself with some amazing people that like will be lifelong relationships through this, my own experience. And so I hope that we, can at least intercede for you if you're feeling less than supported by friends, family, whomever during your journey.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up, people's feelings about, even conception. And there's a common saying of like, well, it'll happen when on God's time, and
maybe this is God's plan for you not to have children, or
yeah. Well, and to me, well, one, it's a medical treatment, so we don't tell people necessarily with cancer that God will heal them, because of like, in my mind, He gives us these tools because I do believe in God, and some people don't, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
there's space for
me,
everyone.
Yeah. For me, I do, and then and so the way I view it is like He gave us these tools to be able to like help people. So why wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of that story of where a man's drowning in the ocean and a boat gets sent to him and he says, no, I'm okay, God will save me. And they send him another boat. He says, no, I'm okay, God will save me. And this happens multiple times. And then he ends up drowning and he gets to heaven and says, I thought you were going to save me. And he was like, yeah, I sent you 3 boats. Right. So like, yeah, He gave us all these tools. You can, you can. And so that's how I view it, is like, we have all these amazing tools. Why wouldn't we use them?
No, absolutely. Or, if you go to work and you work with heavy machinery and you get your arm cut off, like, I don't believe that was God's plan for you to just walk around without your limb. Like, no, God gave us science and physicians, and like, in my belief, God was the master physician. Yeah. So like he has people that can intercede and, reattach your limb for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes unfortunate things happen. And so we do need, assistance along the way. Our car breaks down and we have mechanics that can help us, to fix that. And so that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't mean that God meant for you to walk everywhere for the rest of your life.
And, some people, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there are some religions that don't, agree with medical treatment or different types of medical treatments that we have. And, your belief may be, no, He did intend for you to walk around like that. And again, this isn't to like bash anybody's views, but hopefully, maybe some people it'll help you like see things different, or maybe you might listen to this and say, nope, I still don't, it's not for me, and that's okay.
Right.
But hopefully it gives you a little bit of space to realize that, you can get help, and there are ways that we can accommodate different religious beliefs.
Right.
And hopefully this helps to kind of open that door.
No, absolutely. I think that's really the most important part here, is that like, it's normal to have conflicting feelings during this whole journey. And it's normal to want to feel loved and supported through this journey. And I think that's the main goal of this episode, is just to make you feel like you're not alone. And no matter where you are in your journey or what your beliefs are along the journey.
Yeah. And as far as IVF goes, some common ones are, well, I guess some common things that are a common theme are, embryos that don't get used. I guess should we start there, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are some religions that just forbid IVF or ART as a whole. I think that there are certain denominations, even of Christianity, that forbid it, or who have spoken out against it. There's certain other religions that forbid it, and I think that there's still people that say I am XYZ, and still, when faced with infertility, they choose to move forward with fertility treatment. I do think that sometimes, we were talking about that sometimes, unfortunately, it can lead to delaying treatment.
Yeah.
Because there is shame around it, or guilt, or a lack of even testing. So I have come across in my like travels where I go and speak to providers, I've had many providers come to me and say like, hey, do you have any suggestions on how to help this particular couple? Because maybe for religious beliefs, the male is in the relationship is not wanting to move forward with a semen analysis. And so we have options that can assist with, with that. Or, maybe, yeah. So, I mean, I think that those can sometimes delay treatment because of either delaying testing or, shame or guilt. So I think that can factor into it. On the other hand, we have lots of patients whose churches have rallied around them, and they have had fundraisers, and members of the church have donated money. Actually, was reached out to just last week by a potential patient who her church had raised the money for them to move forward with IVF. I'm sorry. Her church had raised the money to move forward with adoption, and they had gotten permission to attempt IVF with that money, and so she was wanting to know like how she could get that transferred to us, because she wanted to come to us for IVF, with the potential of embryo adoption. And so she, that the church was holding the funds, they had all rallied around them. And so, we definitely see kind of all facets through, different walks of life for sure.
Yeah. And you brought up, testing as a first barrier. So obviously we're going to need sperm to fertilize an egg, or even just to do IUI. And so one thing is that's done through masturbation in a cup, and then it goes to our lab, and then the embryologist put it in a syringe, and it's used however, whether we're doing ICSI with IVF or IUI. But yeah, some people, that's against our religion. And so we do have, there are condoms you can use to where you can catch it in there and then give it to the lab that way. As far as,
sperm extraction, if that's not an option for you, we do have procedures that can just extract sperm or semen from the male partner if that's a better route for patients. So we do have a kind of a multitude of different options depending on what works best for you.
Yeah, so there's that. And then I know another thing people have brought up, and I've had consults with this where, they don't want to fertilize a bunch of eggs at once, to which, I always educate first and say, just because, let's say an egg fertilizes and makes it to the blastocyst stage, it doesn't mean it's going to implant, or it doesn't mean it's going to be chromosomally normal. Just because an embryo is chromosomally normal doesn't mean it's going to result in a live birth. And so just because it's an embryo doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn into a live birth. And then we also have the conversation of, okay, so let's say you want to freeze eggs and then only fertilize one at a time. We go over there is added cost because we have to thaw and ICSI or do conventional IVF, however you're going to do that each time. There is an attrition rate, so you can, every egg, it's only one cell, so it may not survive the thaw, which may result in more cycles, which may result in more time. And so as long as there's that education piece there and they understand it,
right?
Then yeah, everyone, I know at CNY is always okay with accommodating religious beliefs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, an informed decision, I think, is, so, all parties are informed of, the potential risk involved in whatever it is. And if they're, in agreement that, yes, the risk are I guess the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
So, that's my decision and that's what I would like to move forward with. As long as you're like informed and that's your decision after you've been informed, then we're cool with it. Like as long as it's not, the medical board's
Gonna
not
be
coming in.
harmful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've brought up this before too, is natural IVF without meds. And again, it's just an informed decision.
Right.
So we've talked about it, I know in the PCOS podcast, and probably in others, but the menstrual cycle, every month a group of eggs comes out, goes into the ovaries. One egg will grow into a dominant follicle. It'll ovulate. And so natural IVF is doing that basically without meds. And so, we're letting you grow a dominant follicle all on your own. We're watching for ovulation and we trigger you depending on if you're doing absolutely no meds or some meds. And then we do a retrieval. And again, it's understanding that, hey, not every follicle has an egg, so there's a chance we might not get anything. And just because we get an egg, it doesn't mean it'll be mature. It doesn't mean it'll fertilize. It doesn't mean it'll grow to blast. Doesn't mean it'll be normal. And it doesn't mean, it's going to result in a live birth. And so that may result in more time, money, and many cycles to get to your goal. And you may say, okay, but that's what I'm comfortable with doing.
That's right.
Because it aligns with my morals, just like I have my own. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, we do get questions about natural IVF quite often for a variety of different reasons. People are somewhat surprised whenever I tell them that we do natural IVF at CNY, because there are a lot of fertility clinics that I think that try to shy away from that, and that's not something that they may be comfortable with. But we want to accommodate you in the way that you're most comfortable. And so if natural IVF is what, works best for you, then we're absolutely on board with that.
Yeah, and I think too, because every cycle they have to, we all do have to report. And so if it's a failed cycle, meaning you don't get pregnant, then that's kind of a count against them.
Right.
And the quicker way to success would be using medications. But, at CNY, and I think this is what's so cool, is, we don't have restrictions. We're not so much worried about, success rates as we are with meeting people where they're at.
Right.
And I think that's really cool, and it's a special thing about working here specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around how successful are you if you're not helping everyone, and that's really something that if we're attempting to help everyone, and if patients don't fit into this box, then we're not choosing to help them, and that's not what we do at CNY. And so I think that it's beautiful that Dr. Kiltz's mission and the mission of CNY is that we give everybody a chance to have the baby that they desire, and that is our goal, rather than this obscure number with a percentage sign behind it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And another thing that gets brought up a lot is, okay, if you're doing ICSI, which stands for intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where the embryologist is picking a sperm basically, and then they inject it in the egg, that's typically what we do at CNY for everybody. It's included in your package. Some places you have to pay more for it. Here it's included. I know some people's beliefs too have been, the sperm, really, it should be selected by the egg, or it should be selected itself, or God selects that sperm. And so we do have where you can opt out of ICSI and do conventional IVF, which is where, we have the eggs and then we pretty much just put the sperm in the same dish, and then we see what fertilizes and what doesn't. That way, it's more unassisted in that sense. So that is an option as well, and you can opt out of ICSI.
Yes, absolutely. And on that same kind of notion, we have patients sometimes that say, I prayed about it and God told me that I should transfer this embryo or this embryo. So you can also choose, or, which embryo to transfer. Some patients decide, that they would like the embryologist to choose which, um, embryo to transfer, based on like grading or, other set of data. But if you have talked it over with your religious council and, you and your pastor have chosen this particular embryo, or you prayed about it and you feel like that this is the best embryo, like that's absolutely, you have autonomy over that as well.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't want to do the pre-implantation genetic testing or the PGT testing of embryos because, they say, well, it doesn't matter to me. No matter what I get, I'm going to transfer all of them. And some clinics won't let you transfer anything other than a euploid, which is a normal, and potentially a low-level mosaic, which is mostly normal. And so, at CNY, typically if somebody brings that up to me and they are a candidate for PGT, or I think, their case is good for PGT, I'll always give them, hey, I understand that, but the reason I'm suggesting it is because, you have a history of miscarriage or these issues, and this is going to help you get to a live birth faster and maybe more safely because we're not having to go through more miscarriages or whatever the reason is. But again, at CNY, if you have an aneuploid and you want to transfer it, we don't say no, so you can. The caveat to that being you have to have genetic counseling from a genetic counselor about that specific embryo, and you sign a waiver stating that you acknowledge the risks, but we don't forbid you from transferring your own embryos.
Yeah, and if you have embryos that you, like let's say you've fulfilled your family building goals, and you wanted to have 2 children, you had the 2 children, you have embryos left, but you're not comfortable with donating them, you're not comfortable with donating, to another family or to science, or discarding them. We do what's called compassionate transfers. And so that's where we are transferring the embryo during, a frozen embryo transfer. We're completing that frozen embryo transfer just like we would any other frozen embryo transfer. It's just during a period of your cycle that you are least likely to have implantation.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool option. I didn't know obviously that existed before I worked here. And they don't talk about that like when they're talking about IVF on the news or wherever.
Right.
That these are options, and we can put it back into your body instead of just discarding them. Obviously, some people aren't okay with their genetic material being donated to another family, or if I donate it to science, what's going to happen to it? Which embryologists use them to train as far as biopsies and assisted hatching. But again, if it's something you're not comfortable with, you don't want to discard them. You can transfer them at a time when we know they won't implant. You could always continue to pay for storage as well, but there's options.
Yeah, and we even have patients that move their embryos from other clinics because their clinics don't do compassionate transfers, and so they move their embryos to CNY for us to perform compassionate transfers because that's what feels best to them, and that most it most closely aligns with their beliefs, and so that's always an option as well for people who have maybe created embryos at another clinic, and they're being stored there, and they feel like that's what's best for the future of their family and their embryos. Yeah,
and same thing with PGT embryos. Their clinic wouldn't let them transfer their aneuploid, so they want to transfer it here, and we will do that as well. And you brought up a thing with embryo transfers about praying during transfers, or if people want to play music, religious music during their transfer, they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have some providers who have kind of become known for asking if they can pray with you or pray over your transfer. If you're not comfortable with that, there's you absolutely can say, hey, that's not for me. And there's never any judgment or hard feelings or anything like that. But it does, feel best for a lot of people, and some people, it just gives them a sense of peace and, moving into that transfer, and that dreaded 2-week wait.
Yes.
And so that's something that like we do have several providers who I know are very comfortable with, and if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I would say I'm one who, if you want to say a prayer or have that or play, religious music, I am all about it. Obviously, I kind of told you my beliefs. But I think, I've never offered it per se, just because I don't know
Right.
what people's beliefs are. But yeah, if that's something you want to do during your transfer, I'm always more than happy. Just ask. Don't ask me to lead it because I'm awkward. And I'm also one of those people when I pray that like prays in my head and then I just ramble. And then we're off topic. So if you want to lead it, then yeah, I'm always more than happy to
hold
do
your
that.
hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let you take the lead.
Yeah. We'll just go off on a tangent if I start it. So as long as you lead it, yes. We're pretty open to kind of anything that you want to do on your transfer day for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's play Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of that now. So you can do that.
That's right. I think that like it's important to note that this journey is so incredibly difficult. And I think that like it's normal for the human to question, why me? And it causes, many people to question their faith at times. I've struggled with that myself personally. I have questioned my faith. I've questioned, like, why do my husband and I have to, like, why does this have to be our journey? Why does this have to be our struggle? Is this because I didn't pray hard enough? Or, there have been times where, like, if something good happened, like I had a good transvaginal ultrasound and, like I had great follicle count, like if I didn't pray long enough or I didn't pray hard enough, like these thoughts of like, oh, the next time I go back, it's going to be like, I'm going to have like half the follicles that I had last time, or, and you just like really get in your head. And I think that that's super normal. I didn't know if I was being punished for something. I know my husband, for a period of time, he just like kept saying that this was like his karma for something he had done, earlier in his life, or like maybe he wronged somebody and this was, like his karma for that. And finally, I think that like, even though I felt like the same way, but maybe just in different verbiage, you want to find, when it's your partner, you want to find like the positive way to be like, no, like this is not, you're not being punished for something. And finally, one day I was just like, babe, there are children who are newborns and have cancer. Like, they're not being punished for something.
Yeah.
This is not their karma for doing, crying too hard when they were born or something, or loud, or, not latching on enough. Or, and like so many really, really good people have terrible things that happen to them. And I just, for me, I don't believe that was, karma. And so, I just want to like kind of remind people if that starts to creep in, because I think it's super like normal and human. Just to also think that like sometimes good people have bad things happen to them. And sometimes bad people have really good things happen to them. And you're like, my gosh, like, why them,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that those are all normal things to think, through this journey. And, it's very difficult. It's very traumatic. It's very hard. And I think that it's very normal to just always question everything. And, what did I do? Whether it's, maybe your transfer failed. Like, what did I do to cause this? Whether it was spiritually or like physically, like, did I run too much, or did I, did I get up too fast, or, did I run down the stairs or whatever? And so I think that like all of that plays into this for everyone, regardless of like what your religious background or beliefs are, or if you don't have any at all. I think that it's just like normal to always question it, but always know that like you're not alone in that. I think that that's definitely the majority of people going through this, journey, that they've questioned it at some point or another also, or know how, no matter how strong you are in your faith or your beliefs. I think that, it's at nighttime when the lights are off and you're alone with nothing but your thoughts. I think that it's normal for those thoughts to creep in, and it doesn't make you any less deserving of the goal that you're seeking.
Well, yeah, and that's why, I think that we were given these tools, and, again, I've given you a little bit kind of my religious background, but, one thing I remember when I started like going on the path to being an NP and different things, my dad would always tell me things like, don't ever get to the point where you think you know it all and there's no room left for faith.
Yeah.
And for me, that was always like important and something that always stood out to me. And a lot of times, even now, people will bring up, well, do you ever feel like you're playing God at your job? And I don't, and the reason why is because sometimes, and there's still a lot that's not understood about fertility and infertility, but we can do everything right. We can have the perfect embryo. It could be euploid. The lining could look perfect. We have this perfect environment, and no matter what we do, sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah. And so there is a part of me that it's like, I could do everything right, and some things are just out of my hands. And like, to me, we could have a poorly graded embryo. You could have taken meds wrong and, it works. Or you did IVF for years and then you give up and then you get pregnant unassisted at home. Like, we can't control everything. And that's hard for me on a lot of factors in my life.
That is but not something I do well.
Same. So, I even on my Instagram handle, I have where God and science intersect, and that's my belief. It doesn't have to be yours, but we can't control everything. And so, there are some things that are just out of our control, and I agree. Like, it's so important to know that this isn't a karma thing. This isn't do I deserve this? Because that's not how. Well, if you believe, I don't think that's how love and grace works at all. Yeah. And if you don't believe, it might just be, well, it just happens. So, but I agree with you. I don't think that's how that works.
Well, and also like, just imagine the amount of faith that it takes every day through this journey to keep showing up, to keep going in for blood work, to keep showing up for an ultrasound, to keep going back for, another cycle, to keep, to do another transfer, to have another consultation, to make another budget, to like figure out how we're going to afford this, to continue to make your monthly payment.
Yeah.
When it feels like it's not working, or pay for your storage when you're like, oh, like, why hasn't this worked the way that I hoped it would work yet? And so it takes an enormous amount of faith to keep showing up for yourself, and for the hope of that baby that you're, so desiring, so wishing for, praying for, whatever, whatever terminology you want to use, but it takes an enormous amount of faith to keep showing up every day. Even when it feels like all I want to do is give up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And then, even on the provider side of things, if you're somebody that's thinking about working in this field, at CNY, we have providers from all religions.
Absolutely.
Goal is when you come to us, you can't really tell what we are, because we will, educate and honor your goals and your own beliefs. So this podcast is different because you're seeing a little bit of kind of our beliefs on the side. But I think, any advice I would give to even like somebody coming to work here is kind of the same advice I got. Whereas if your heart's in it and you want to help people, I think, it is such a cool, amazing field. There are some times that are hard, and I've talked about this before, but I get a lot of slack for it on, multiple embryo transfers or outside of transfer guidelines. And for me, that is more so of when I took this job, when I went into this field, a big thing for me was I want to help people, and I never want to be the reason that somebody's in a worse position. I never want to cause harm.
Right.
So if I know something could potentially that I'm going to do cause you to make a hard decision or be in a situation that is painful or hard, I don't ever want to be the reason that you're in that scenario. And so sometimes patients can take that as, oh, that's my decision and she doesn't want to honor it. But it's kind of different for me, and it's multifactorial, and I just don't want to be, I don't want to put you in a bad spot.
Sure.
And so there are some times where I would say, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but we do have someone else here who can, and, acknowledge you knowing the risks. And that's okay. And, everyone helps each other out here, and Dr. Kiltz is great about honoring different beliefs, and I think that's just so cool. And so I think if you're questioning even working in this field, to really think about, where your heart is, and I would give the same advice.
Yeah, I think that everyone at CNY works together so harmoniously, and like it works beautifully for the patients.
Yeah.
And so, we have patients that request a certain provider for a variety of different nuances, and that's or a location
for a female provider.
Right. Absolutely. And so we we want to, like you said earlier, we want to meet the patient where they're at. And so whatever is important to you, whether that's in regards to your faith, your religion, past trauma, whatever it has to do with, we want to do our best to respect that and honor those wishes. And so I think it's important for you to, find someone you're comfortable with and then share those things with them. And if you need to, if you feel like that after you've shared that with them, that, something changes and you find a different provider, you want to go over here and see, like we will absolutely, we always accommodate that. So, obviously, we can never guarantee that you'll have a certain provider for a certain procedure. All of our providers, obviously, there are times where they need to take off for family or personal reasons, or, obviously our providers can't work 6 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. And so there are times that they're going to be not available for whatever reason. But if you do request a certain provider, we absolutely do our best to try to accommodate that to the best of our ability. And if we're not able to accommodate that, we will try to find the most appropriate next person that can accommodate that, at that location, or even if that means you need to, you go to a different location, like, hey, like if this person's not here, I'd like to switch and go to this clinic, to see this person. Like, cool, like no problem. We can do that.
Well, and, I guess even a takeaway from this whole thing is no matter what your beliefs are, you should feel comfortable telling these things to your provider. If you don't vibe with that person for whatever reason, go to another provider and find somebody that you're comfortable with, because this is an intimate journey, who will honor your beliefs, your own ethics, who you can kind of feel comfortable with, and know, that there are workarounds to things. We don't have to create multiple embryos at once. There are different ways of fertilization. there are ways to put embryos back in your body instead of discarding them. And so, bring these things up. Don't let that be a barrier, and know that if you have a conversation with the provider and you still decide it's not for you, that's okay. You don't have to move forward, but you can't make decisions with knowledge you don't have, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's never a one size fits all for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you think you want to add?
I think that whatever we can do to make this environment the most loving, caring, supportive environment that we can. I think that we do a great job of trying to do, but obviously we're always looking for ways to improve. And so, if there is something that you have thought of that you feel like that we could do and implement, or things that we could do better, please definitely don't hesitate to let us know. It takes all of us. It is definitely, a patient-centric company, and I love that so much.
Yeah.
And so we really, we love getting feedback from patients and saying like, hey, I thought of this cool idea. Like maybe this is something that you guys could start to do. And so, we really rely on our patients to make new and improved, procedures or policies or whatever you want to call them, make it better for you.
Yeah.
And so if there's something that you think of that we, haven't thought of, please reach out to us. You can always reach out via your patient portal. You could email either one of us at cnyfertility.com/fertilish. There's a form that you can fill out. You can Instagram us. Whatever feels best for you. It can be anonymous. It can be, right there in your chart, whatever you feel that you want to let us know about ways that we can just make this experience better for you, honor your wishes more, or just new and improved services we can provide. Please let us know.
Yeah. And if you're out there and you think praying really hard is how you get pregnant and no one ever corrected you, schedule a consult. But yeah. All right. Well, we will see you guys next week.
See you next week.